Welcome to Sports CTO Talks. In this series, we would be connecting with industry leaders from the sports and technology industry, where we will be diving deep into discussions with the experts. I am Ami, your guide on this journey through the mind of tech leaders who are shaping the future of sports. We will dive deep into discussions from AI to cloud, from sustainability to cybersecurity. If it is sports tech, we are talking about it. Today, we have a very interesting guest with us, and we are thrilled to have you, Dr. 𝗪𝗲𝗍𝗪𝗏. We welcome you to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ami.
Absolutely. She's a leading voice in the field of sports performance and exercise psychology. Dr. 𝗪𝗲𝗍𝗪𝗏 currently heads the sports psychology vertical at 𝗪𝗲𝗆, where she has built the program from the ground up, leading clinical practice, designing evidence-based mental performance programs, and forging partnerships with top sports organizations to bring psychology into the heart of Indian sports. With a doctorate in sports and exercise psychology from Glasgow Caledonian University, a master's from Brunel University, and 7 years of applied experience, she has worked with athletes across 10 plus sports, including cricket, hockey, gymnastics, and many more, at grassroots level, national, and international levels. She herself is a former national level table tennis player and Air India sports scholar. 𝗪𝗲𝗍𝗪𝗏 blends her competitive experience with clinical expertise to create athlete-centered, impactful interventions focused on performance, resilience, and well-being. Today in the podcast, she would be sharing what happens when science meets the sports, how psychology, performance, and player well-being is important and integral part of the sports. Once again, we welcome you, Dr. 𝗪𝗲𝗍𝗪𝗏.
Thank you very much.
So
Happy to get cracking.
absolutely. So my first question is like, as someone who is deeply involved into the sports psychology domain, how do you see technology changing the way we understand athlete mental health or or their performances today?
I think a short answer is technology is reshaping how we understand the mental health of athletes and then its impact on their performance. I think earlier a lot of psychology work in terms of sport was just based on self-report or observation of the psychologist, right? But now, say with wearables, with apps, with say some AI-driven tools, we are able to track a lot more. We are able to gauge more information, which allows for deeper work with athletes. We are also able to track sleep, recovery, stress, mood in real time, which is objective data. And when I pair that with my therapeutic and clinical expertise, I think it enhances the work that we do with athletes. I think the other element of how I see technology changing is also enabling the accessibility of these resources, right? So mental health support now in sport can reach to a wider range of athletes. Earlier, maybe it was just based on locality, but even today, like my practice is predominantly based in Mumbai, but I work with athletes across our country and some even internationally. And I think sort of technology enables this access. Of course, as a psychologist, I'm of a predominant view that it cannot replace the human connection at all, but it's giving us, I think, sharper insights, faster interventions, different ways and multiple efficient ways to connect with our athletes, which is, I think, a huge leap forward in terms of sports psychology.
Absolutely. So like when you were talking about wearables and the devices, so how is tech helping the mental performance? Is it measuring it, or like how are you as a side, like as a person from this background tracking it, and how are you are implementing it into the field?
I think, like I said earlier, it was all self-report. Earlier, it was all just say the psychologist observing it, but now we have more objective measures to do it. And I think that is what tech is changing. I think with wearables, we can easily track one's heart rate variability, the most basic ones, sleep cycles, or any kind of stress markers, any kind of changes in an athlete's mood, say pre-competition, during competition, post-competition, sometimes even to the lead up of the competition, right? So that is one where, and these are direct indicators of one's, say, mindset, mental load, so to speak. The other element is where we talk about biofeedback, right? And biofeedback real time can come to know about athletes' breath pattern, focus, attention, some to some extent reaction time, decision making under pressure, all of those things which are directly linked to one's performance. Some sports which are extremely fast paced, like say a badminton, a table tennis, it's very important if we can gauge data from such devices, which can enable not just the psychologist but the entire multidisciplinary team to be able to enhance our inputs, therefore enhance their performance. And I think this, in this way, sports psychology specifically can be made more measurable, right? And when it's more measurable, when it's more tangible, I think I am better able to explain to the coaches, to the selectors, to the funders, at times to the entire entourage that goes along with the athlete about how this actually impacts, how a mental training intervention actually impacts an athlete's performance. Otherwise, it was always looked at ki, okay, he's going to come and talk to you, and then there will be some talking intervention, and that's about it. But I think now with the enablement
Statistics
of tech,
and data.
I think I'm able to show them objective data, which a lot of coaches, specifically from my experience, I can tell you, are wanting that. And I think it helps them build trust. It helps them to see the change, right? And I think now we should be able to adapt that in our practice to be able to make it more viable, make it more trustworthy as well.
Okay. So, like, how does this data, what you're talking about the performance or about their, like, the heart rate and their statistics, how do you optimize it to enhance the performance without overwhelming the athletes? Because that is a chance, that they will have a lot of mental pressure during the game, before, post, pre, anything. So, like, how do you manage that?
I think that is such a critical point. Sometimes, at times, even when I am shown a lot of data, when I work with, say, physios or SNCs, and they pull up all these graphs, it can be very jarring to see the metrics and the drops and sort of highs, etc. But I think that's where too much data can actually harm performance or the mindset by creating, say, confusion, untimely pressure, etc. I think the key would be to curate the data in a way which is significant given the time where the athlete is. If we are in a pre-competition phase, then it makes sense to sort of enlighten the athlete with certain different metrics. If the athlete is already in competition, then you want to use the data wisely, which is going to enable them to play better, because ultimately that's the goal that we're all working toward, that the athlete should be able to achieve high performance, right? So, for example, say I'm working with a cricketer and they are a fast bowler. I think we want to focus on their recovery. We want to focus on their sleep, and not everything and any other thing that the app or the wearable will sort of give you, right? And then the input from my end would be that, listen, I feel this has been the track record for the few last nights. This is what we need to now focus on. Now, can we look at an intervention that maybe we worked upon, and then you can use that to improve your sleep cycles? I think in those little ways, bite-sized informations, easy language, in an order to empower them and not overwhelm them. I think that's the thumb rule. And I feel like when it is framed right, so one, that the psychologist needs to understand and comprehend the data, then frame it correctly, it can become a guide for athletes as opposed to, again, becoming another source of stressor.
Absolutely. So, like, coming from the sports psychology background, like there are a lot of technology companies who are building dashboards for different sports. It can be cricket, it can be hockey, multiple sports. So, you coming from that field, what do you feel, on the dashboard? These things are important, these things are necessary, these things are not necessary. There might be something. So, like, if you could share that with us for a better understanding.
I think it's been quite a few weeks that I'm dabbling into this now, because I feel integrating the psychological markers of performance into dashboards can be tremendously powerful, right? It can give you a snapshot of your athlete very quickly, very efficiently, and you can use that data correct. If it is used, you can absolutely help an athlete, not just with performance, but also some well-being elements as well. And sports psychology, yes, it is looked at as a high performance need and a service, but we also work with athletes on their well-being. And I think there is an intersection which is going to be very powerful. However, it has to be done very responsibly, right? I think the first rule would be the context. So numbers, say stress levels, readiness scores they should not be used as judgments. They should be signals. Like I said,
Okay.
we have to be able to comprehend the data first and then align it with our athletes. The athlete, and I would say even the coaches, then need to be educated about what the data means and what it doesn't mean. I think when we are shown all these numbers and these colors start popping up, automatically our brain sort of can think saying, oh my God, what's wrong with me? Or why are there so many dips? So I think that educating the people who are going to be using the data becomes very important. And psychologists definitely play a big role here when you're talking about performance indicators when it comes to the mental element of performance. I think second most important thing would be an athlete's privacy.
Correct.
I think with technology, that's my biggest fear as a practitioner who works in sport and with athletes, right? Not every psychological metric needs to be shown to the entire staff. We can have access to certain sensitive data points which have to be respected. You have to understand that you have to respect the athlete's privacy, confidentiality, all of that. So I think CTOs or people who are very enthusiastic about building, they have to incorporate away, and some things are better if they are kept within the trusted circle. I think that's one bit. And I think finally, the data should also be able to give us insights on what the action needs to be taken on,
Okay.
right? So maybe the experts also need to align, saying not just throwing data at you, but throwing it at you in a way where we could make sense about, okay, what next steps does it look like? So for example, you're tracking sleep, and I'm constantly seeing that the sleep of my athlete is kind of on the poorer end. I think a red flag could be about, I think it should sort of trigger that, hey, I think a recovery protocol or a sleep hygiene intervention sort of needs to be sort of given to the athlete at say this point. And I think those would be some of the bits. So I think used responsibly, I think the most common thing that dashboards would do or AI tools would do is normalize that mental health is also equally, even more significantly, a part of every other sports science intervention that an athlete goes through. And I think it'll create a huge cultural shift in sport. And we can see that it's now used quite widely globally.
Correct. So like if we talk about a team, a team who is building an app or a website or a dashboard for that matter. So like what are the essential or the key people have to be there on that team other than the technical people? Like you are dealing with everybody, like an athlete, you as a sports psychologist, you are dealing with a technical person. So like who has to be there on the team to give all the correct information, what is needed on the dashboard?
I think the entire entourage that the athlete has access to. Of course, when we talk about people, there are huge investments also to be made. So you need the right kind of operational and functional support for something like this to come into existence. And from a science point of view, you have to get a few people covered. Of course, you have to consider an athlete's perspective. You need the coaching managerial staff definitely involved, at least during the brainstorming phases of such a dashboard. Then you need the sport science multidisciplinary team. So you need a psychologist. The basics would be a physiotherapist, a medicine practitioner, a strength and conditioning coach, a nutritionist, because that's typically the team that I tend to work with quite a lot. And we share a lot of internal inputs about. Then if you want to go even more deeper, a biomechanist, somebody who also, now we have athletes who got access to like sleep specialists, because I feel sleep becomes such a big important part in terms of recovery. So maybe people like that, definitely. And then always have like a legal consult saying how can this be executed well within the rights, well within the domains of executing something like this, which is going to have such sensitive data, so much of it as well. So I feel like maybe the functional and operational is one, and then the clinical team on top of the athlete, the coach, those perspectives would be very important.
Correct. And like, what are the must-haves for mental performance to be measured, or the, mental performance metrics is uh, that you feel that has to be there for an athlete?
In terms of like what should we sort of look at if you're looking at track?
Yes.
I think a few of them, but the must-haves would be sleep first for me, because I feel it underpins recovery. And sometimes your heart rate variability, etc. I think if you have sleep data, you can you can understand the athlete a lot more in detail. I think heart rate variability, definitely HRV, I think it's one of the most common ones now as well.
Correct.
It's a reliable marker of stress, competition readiness. Then I would say like a simple mood or like a wellness tracker. Sometimes it could be self-report element that you can add to the app, and I think which sort of captures the athlete's subjective state, as we call it, right? Say, and they could track it just before going into the competition, coming out of the competition. We can then map it along with the results, their performance analysis, etc. I think these three together, the sleep, the HRV, then a wellness or a mood check, can give you like a very comprehensive, a balanced picture of physiology as well as an athlete's, say, lived experience during training or competition. And I think then when the clinical team has access to this, I think you're 80% there already. You
Okay.
already have the data. Now it's about like how I spoke earlier. It's about you and you making sense of the data and then it improving your intervention with athletes.
Okay. So like when you were talking about like, privacy of the athlete, the data privacy of the athlete, what are the other ethical considerations one should keep into mind, like all the tech leaders who are making new things into sports? And there's a lot of expansion these days happening into the sports industry, sports tech industry specifically. So what are the ethical considerations according to you should be kept into mind?
I think first is an understanding that when you're working in a mental health space, there is a lot of data, most of which is deeply personal and sensitive. So I think
Correct.
that's a thumb rule understanding, a foundational understanding that any CTO or any kind of team who's wanting to step into a field like this should have a deeper understanding of. One has to have an understanding of even the laws, rules, regulations, the legality element of it. And I think I would want to highlight the first would be privacy and consent,
Correct.
right? I think athletes must be given informed. I think athletes must be given the right for informed consent on what is being tracked, who can see it, how will it be used as well. And I feel like at times they should also be given the right to opt out if
Okay.
they at any point feel that no, I don't think this is comfortable or I'm not yet comfortable to share as much in depth. I think there should be an element that they could track back their consent with due respect to their privacy. The other element would be, I think, ownership of the data, right? The default assumption should be that the athlete owns their data of their, at least the psychological data, not the team or say not the platform. And I think this is where technology should be able to empower them and not exploit.
Correct.
So I think a deeper understanding, of course, a contextualized understanding of who the ownership of data is going to be rested with. Also an element of interpretation of mental health, right? Where sometimes a stress, if you're say capturing stress or an element of mood, that does not translate then into a diagnosis, right?
Okay.
If you sort of constantly see low mood and it can be misinterpreted by non-specialists saying, oh, my athlete's depressed now, or they're highly anxious personality or whatever, I think this can lead to unfair labeling, can contribute to the stigma that anyway athletes are sort of struggling and dealing with.
Correct.
And I think in those senses, the CTOs should be able to build for safeguarding against the misuse of that kind of data. And I think lastly, I think an overall recommendation would be to the data collection should be purpose driven, right?
Okay.
Where the purpose is to serve the athlete's well-being and performance and not from a point of view of control or surveillance. I
Correct.
think the intent should be that how can this captured information be used better to improve an athlete's performance from all elements. So psychology, physiology, say the training load, recovery, all of those elements. I think those would be my key recommendations that CTOs or tech leaders wanting to come into this would be.
Correct. Like now there is lot of social media. It is there everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. Everyone is seeing it. And majority of the time we are on to it. So like how you as an expert, avoid that toxic online pressure on the athlete, and how do you train the athlete, and what as an athlete should they be taking care of?
Mm.
to avoid that pressure?
That's such a timely question, right? Like you correctly said, we're all on it.
Correct.
I think on some days we're all mostly on it as well,
Correct.
right? So neither as a psychologist am I immune to it, not at all. And I think it is one of the next big frontiers that we are going to have to know how to regulate the use of. I think that's my predominant opinion, personally and professionally, for myself. And I think in sport for athletes, currently it's quite a double-edged sword, because you would know at your end as well that it does give athletes the visibility,
Absolutely.
fan engagement and connection, which is
Correct.
very important for their careers and professional sort of growth that they are looking at. I think that's an element, but we cannot ignore the toxicity that it brews, right? And that toxicity or dysregulated use is detrimental to one's mental health. That's also a known fact now, right? And in that way, I feel like tech can play almost like a buffering role. I don't know, maybe magically have some kind of smart filtering, right? Where these abusive, harmful comments after a performance, and I think stopping those comments, if it can be done. I mean, I'm very technologically naive to know how that can be built, but in a way where sort of have that built-in buffer so that they are at least protected from this. I know a lot of athletes who switch off from social media as well, the ones that I work with, as a healthy way to deal. So at least during competition time, they're not exposed to say some at times trolling, at times, pictures being put up, breaches of privacy, all of that. One of the things, the way that I work with athletes, especially the young ones, is a lot of timekeeping. I'm a big proponent of time gating apps. Use it, but you use it in control. Regulate your use is always my recommendation to athletes, to parents, to coaches, because the moment you tell them that don't use it, this is harmful, I feel like it's common human behavior. You tell somebody don't do it, we would want to do it more.
We would
So
want
in
to.
what, right? So in what ways can you regulate, educate the athlete about a well-regulated use of social media? I think that is a much healthier, much sustainable option given the times that we all live in. And I think from an ecosystem point of view, I try and align my coaches, the parents of athletes that I work with, to drill in them that how can we ensure that the athlete, the child, does not undergo psychological harm because of social media, without cutting them off completely from this kind of the authentic connection that at times that they build with fans. Right. So I think it's that balance, which is a very difficult balance to crack. But these could be some of the ways in which I work with young ones, and I work with a lot of young developmental athletes. They're also at that age where it's very exciting to be on social media. It's very exciting to share all these medal-winning photos and podium finishes. So what can we do to not completely prohibit it, but teach them safer ways to use it? I think that's where my mind goes.
So when you were talking about, like they want to share the podium wins or the medals on the social media, there is another aspect, like if they don't post it, there might be an issue with sponsorships, and that is a very critical aspect of the sports industry. So how, how does that work? Like how you as a expert deal with it if it is there in the way?
I think that's where the use of social media being regulated is where it comes from, right? Because I completely understand and appreciate that now social media has opened up a lot of different ways in which athletes can monetize, or athletes can get funders, get their name out, build a profile and a brand of their own, and it is only sustainable in their longer career as well. So what can be done in a way which is, can you post once you're out of the competition? Can we refrain from instant posting? Can you look at, say, curate a post once you're out of the competition? Maybe that's a healthier way of doing it. Or you could maybe just post quicker updates. At times when athletes have, say, a lot of elite athletes may have a team that can help them with this. So sort of educating the team as well, saying, let's be neutral in terms of the captions, let's be neutral in terms of the pictures, the language that is used. And again, if we can have like filters on, I know Instagram does that now, where a lot of harmful words sometimes are blocked. And I think people athletes, at least athletes who have teams, can then also maintain some hygiene on the account. I think that also becomes quite important. So those would be the ways I would go about it.
So, like, how can we incorporate, at the grassroots level to introduce mental skill trainings or psychological literacy, that sports is important? Equally, tech is important, managing, balancing, and, growing with it. And there are a lot of like people who cannot afford it.
Yes.
So, how, like, as a whole basket, how will you place it at the grassroots level?
I think it could be one's life's work, honestly, with the amount of athletes that are currently there in India who compete, train, play organized sport at the grassroots. It's a massive population to cater to, right? And I think that's where I think the goal should be to normalize that, say, mental skills are a part of your everyday training. It's not a luxury add-on. It's not a good to have. It's a must have. I think that's the first goal proponent, if I would sort of call it. I think you correctly mentioned in India, on one end, we are dealing with stigma of access to services like this, and the other end, we're dealing with, say, affordability.
Correct.
Right? And these are very everyday barriers that athletes, sports coaches, sport parents sort of face about. And I think here is where there is an opportunity for tech to be able to scale something, because I think I look up to tech when I look up to scale a project. Right? Once you have foundational understanding is when you then become tech enabled. That's at least how my understanding sort of works. So I think the first element would be to sort of curate a tool which enables this easy access to basic psychological skills training. Could be breath work, could be self-talk, goal setting, visualization, relaxation, regulation. Those elements which are a very integral part of one's training. No matter at what level you train, you have to take your mind with you when you're in the pitch, when you're in the pool, on the ground, anywhere, right? So I think an element there. I think the other element is where the content could be delivered in local languages. I think that is also where we kind of struggle. I think I have struggled initially in my consultancy work with tier 2, tier 3 city athletes, because I am trained in English. My thinking happens in English. At times, it does get quite difficult to converse or conduct therapy sessions in languages that don't come naturally to you. I feel like tech has that opportunity to be able to translate these programs for wider access, and also sort of solve for that affordability issue. And not every parent or every coach is fluent in English jargon, especially some psychological words. The therapy language can be very jarring if it's only in English. You can have, I've sort of seen athletes cut off saying, "Ma'am, हमें ये नहीं समझ आ रहा है, आप हिंदी में समझाएंगे." And it's very much a reality. So I feel like if we can integrate this, I think we can build athletes, we can build far resilient kids who also then carry the skills beyond sport in their life.
True. So, like, when we look at the next 5 years, like, according to you as an expert, what are the innovations you see at the intersection? It can be of neuroscience, psychology, sports technology, everything. Like, what do you see? What's the next new thing or next big thing?
I'm going to say an element of all of this coming together could be a way in which an athlete gets truly, truly, truly personalized insights about their performance and their well-being, right? Like you correctly said, neuroscience is one element, physiology is one element, psychology is one element. Your training load is a core part of this. And can we have something that bridges all of this together and gives an athlete insights about their own performance, about their own experience of how they sort of move from pre-training phase to training to post-training, or sometimes even for athletes who are undergoing an injury. So they're pre-injury, then they have to go through injury, the rehab phase of it, return to play after that. I think that personalized insight is, I think, where I see innovations should happen. And that's an open call to all sport tech founders as well. I think wearables will also move beyond just HRVs. I think now any basic wearable device, the first thing that it gives you is how well you've slept, what's your body battery,
Yes.
what was your heart rate, what was this,
Yes.
were you in REM3, REM2, what was all of that? Like, I think they'll now they should move a little bit more in terms of mapping more emotional states. I think that becomes quite important. Till today, sometimes I still sort of rely on athletes still subjectively reporting saying, I think, ma'am, I was very anxious before the match. And I think after the match, I was okay. But can we get more insights about what this very anxious means? What was their heart rate like? What was the galvanic temperature like? What was their eyesight, eye gaze behavior like? That's a big proponent in sport. What was their body coordination looking like? I think if we are able to do all of that and then have, say, AI machine learning to analyze this data at a much faster pace, I think we can prevent athletes from fatigue, overtraining, burnout, the mental burnout, therefore reduce injuries, therefore reduce the rehab time, etc., and have more physically as well as mentally fit athletes. And I think we also saw this element somewhere during the Olympics, but an element of virtual reality.
Yes.
Can that be introduced when an athlete is in a skill acquisition phase? Typically, when you're taught a new stroke, you do a lot of repetitive training. Jab tak aapka wo technique you're not, you're completely not imbibing it. So is there an opportunity for some kind of augmented reality element to step into there when an athlete is in a skill acquisition, skill rehearsal phase? I think that bit is quite an open opportunity. And I think always trying to look at, where can the mind and the body come together and not solve for them individually. I think that is where innovations can take place.
You are into this like from a long time now. So like, can you share one or two examples of any specific athlete, not naming them, but like how was their journey and like from the starting till today, and like what are the shifts you have seen in an athlete? It can be from a tech perspective, from a psychology perspective, and how they evolve as an athlete.
Right. I think initially when I started working with a lot of young ones, it was very conversational. I think that's what traditional therapy also looks like, right? I use a lot of something called as cognitive behavior therapy, which is a traditional talk therapy. So it was always a lot of, okay, tell me what's happening with you. What happens before a tournament? What are the some presenting concerns that you want to work with us? So it was a lot of that. Then I slowly moved towards, okay, can we consolidate this learning in some pattern? Then I started introducing a lot of worksheets so that the learning is consolidated. They can take it away from the sessions. They can practice those skills in between two appointments as well, then come back with feedback. Now I see a lot of parents, a lot of athletes recording themselves during training, sharing those training videos with me, sharing match footage with me. So I'm able to real time note down body language changes, emotional expression, etc., which is very valuable information for me. There are a lot of athletes that I work with who use a lot of wearables to track sleep. I think that becomes very important. We then work on sleep logs, sleep hygiene, recovery protocols during a match. If you're traveling internationally, I think that is also where that information on that wearable device comes into picture. How better can we prepare for a longer journey, to reduce fatigue, to improve, getting adjusted better to that, say, the climate there, the weather there. All of those elements, I think I see a change now. And I see a lot more access to at least the basic variables that athletes have on. There are a few of them who also use certain performance analysis tools. And I think initially I would be jarred saying, oh my God, what do I do with this so much data? I had to spend a lot of time myself looking at that footage, those kind of reports that would come out of performance analysis softwares, and see, okay, where is the mental health element in this? Can I map an athlete's emotion, or can I use this data to then improve my understanding of the case a little bit more in detail? What point does the performance drop? Did we sort of discuss about pre-performance anxiety there? Am I seeing a shaky start because of that. So I try and map all of this. So I have to spend a lot of time with the reports that get thrown or to me now.
Absolutely. So, this is the last question in this segment, Dr. Sanika. What are the three quick things, you would like to share as a psychology expert to the athletes and to the tech leaders? Any three things?
Quick. Okay. I think the first would be, please don't throw a lot of metrics at an athlete, especially if they don't have people who can help them make sense of that data. Just look at 2, 3 clear performance indicators, performance markers, or red flags even. If you have sort of noticed the software shows you a trend that there is a constant dip, definitely highlight those. So let's not overwhelm the athlete or the coach with so much data. That would be the first. The second, from a psychologist point of view, it's always consent. It's always privacy.
Yes.
My athlete's privacy, my athlete's confidentiality is at the utmost respect. I have to be able to safeguard them. And I think designing tools in that kind of framework is very, very important. And third would be to sort of humanize it, like make it fun, gamify it if that is element. I mean, they anyway go through a lot of tests. The physios are testing them, the nutritionists are making them keep food diaries and food logs, the psychologist is on their mind, give me a mood check, this, that. I feel like if you're able to gamify it, I think they will be able to better use it. We will see a sustainable use, empowering language, empowering visuals, not making it too clinical. I think keeping the fun element of it, of the usage of whether it's an app, a dashboard, or software, a tool, whatever. I think those would be my keeping it athlete centric would be the blanket statement. Yeah.
Now we'll move on to the next segment of the podcast, that is rapid fire round. I will ask you a few questions. You'll have to be quick in answering.
Done. Challenge accepted.
Okay. Who's your favorite player of all time?
Roger Federer.
Okay. Mind gym or weight room? Which one do you think should come first in a training session?
I don't know why you're asking me this. It has to be the mind gym. It just has to be the mind gym.
One mental skill every athlete should master, if you had to just pick one.
Emotional regulation.
Okay.
Ability to know what happens when I'm under pressure. How can I manage that better? Because pressure is not going anywhere.
It is not going anywhere. Tech or talisman? Under pressure, do you trust a mental training app or a lucky charm?
Oh, tech.
Okay. Favorite pre-ritual, pre-game ritual, one quirky mental routine you love. It can be for yourself or your athlete.
I think it could be the visualization bit. So play your best match in your mind. It just sets you up in a high tempo to start off.
Okay. If sports psychology was an app, what would be its tagline?
I think this is my life's tagline. Mind is your ultimate muscle.
Correct. One sports tech company or product you'd love to work with?
Any company, any sports tech product which is working with elite athletes and their high performance teams, which are creating an environment for the culture for high performance, ensuring that the solution is towards athlete centricity, towards helping the athlete become successful, perform highly, taking care of their well-being. I think that's my dream collaboration.
Absolutely. What is one of the biggest myth about athlete mental health? One you would like to bust
that
forever.
Weak athletes need it, that only weak athletes need it. I think the truth is the stronger you are, the more you need to keep getting better, because sport doesn't stop challenging you. It only continues. So
absolutely. So what's your go-to line to instantly motivate an athlete before a game?
1 point at a time.
Okay. And if you had to take Roger Federer for dinner, where would you take him?
I think I would call him to Bombay.
Okay.
Or I would go to Switzerland.
That's nice. Now we'll move on to the next segment. You will just have to answer one question in 30 seconds. According to you, how will AI contribute to psychology, performance, and player well-being in the coming time?
I think it'll be a game changer if it is used wisely to start off with. It can help, like I said, early signs of stress, burnout, mood shifts, constant mood shifts, even before they become quite visible to the people around the athlete. I think AI will also should be able to analyze patterns of performance, when focus drops, when it's better decision making, recovery, and also sort of giving athletes these personalized personalized insights almost about their training and competition behavior. I think, like I said, spoke about during the social media conversation as well, I think it should sort of enable a supportive buffer between the online toxic content that athletes get thrown towards them, and sort of also sort of be that buffer, I think. And lastly, I think it should empower the human relationship that the psychologist has with the athlete, not replace them. It should be looked at as a tool which can help us enhance our care, and not as a substitute to any kind of human psychologist athlete connection.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Sanika, for sharing wonderful insights and joining us today.
Thank you very much. I hope this was insightful. Thank you very much for having me. It was lovely to talk to you, Ami.
Absolutely. So everyone, let's stay connected for more understanding on sports technology in the future. Please share this episode with your friends, families, and whoever loves sports technology. We will meet in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep exploring.